Hey everyone, it's Ryder from Skip. I've got a great update for you today. I'm going to talk about 4 big pieces of news. First, the good news on the Consumer Price Index and the inflation report that came out today. Second, on the SBA funding, we've got a new way for you to see if your state is approved and accepting applications for that $10 billion. Third, the big news on EIDL prosecutions. The rules have changed a little bit in terms of how long EIDL loans, EIDL grants, and PPP investigations can go on. And that was signed into law last week. I want to talk about that. And finally, some tips for growing your customer base if you're an entrepreneur or a small business owner. I've got a quick update there. And at the end, I'm going to talk about 2 grants that are due tomorrow that you can apply for today. So stick around to the end. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're new, thanks for subscribing and turning on the alerts, and give this video a like so more people see it. You know, we do YouTube lives a couple times a week. Every Tuesday, we talk about new funding and new grants. Every Wednesday, we do a members only webinar. And today on that webinar, we are talking about marketing tips, how to grow your customer base, whether you've gotten funding or not, how to effectively reach your target audience, put together a funnel and a checklist for you to have on hand to make sure you've got your bases covered when it comes to marketing and reaching new customers. So that's today. You can go to helloskip.com/plus, use the promo code RYDERINVITE if you want to join for that one later today. If you miss it today, we do these exclusive members only webinars every single Wednesday. So I hope to see you on a future one. We've got our head of marketing leading today's. So it's going to be an amazing webinar if you're interested in growing your business. Okay, the second piece, the big news from this morning, US inflation eased slightly to 8.5% in July. This was a good sign. I'm going to talk about this briefly. The CPI, or Consumer Price Index, held close to its highest annual rate in 4 decades, despite easing energy costs. You can see the dip right here, and that has caused a rally in the stock markets. Investors see the changing trend as a positive signal. Yes, we're not out of the woods. This basically met expectations and it validated what investors were hoping for. Gas prices and airline prices declined as we're getting near the end of the busy summer travel season. So that's part of the explanation there. But here's the reason why the stock market rallied today so far because of this news. The cooler than expected inflation report has traders swiftly dialing back their expectations for the size of the Fed's next rate hike. So the Feds meet 4 times a year. They raised the rate by 0.5 percentage point last month. Their next meeting is in September. And based on this, they may not need to raise the rates to curb inflation, since we've seen a slight improvement this time around. Higher rates dampen investors' appetite for risky assets like stocks and reduce the worth of companies' future cash flows in pricing models. So this is a big piece. Investors don't want the Fed raising rates, but understandably, the Fed has been doing that to try to control the out of control inflation. So based on this data today, and again, we'll see what the report is next month, folks now think that the Feds may only raise by another 0.5 percentage point in September, not 0.75 of a point. That makes traders willing to pay more for stocks today. Here's a quote from a senior investment strategist at Bessemer Trust. Every CPI print really matters, and we're seeing a repricing in expectations for the next Federal Reserve rate hike already. He continues that lower rate is certainly helping stock futures this morning. Okay, before I talk about the SBA funding and the 2 grants that are due tomorrow, first, the big news from last week, SBA Administrator Guzman announced this. This is a new law signed into law by President Biden, signing of the PPP and Bank Fraud Enforcement Harmonization Act. Basically what that means is investigators now have 10 years to go after the millions of EIDL grant and EIDL loan recipients if they suspect fraud. Here's the 1-page law. So it's very short. So I'll just point out a couple things here because I know many of you watching received either EIDL grants, EIDL loans, and or PPP loans. So just keep this in mind. So Administrator Guzman from the SBA said this: despite our great progress in improving the approval systems, preventing fraud, we know some of the loans approved under the previous administration were not legitimate. I have personally worked closely with the Inspector General and our dedicated teams to ensure transparency and track down the people who abused these relief programs so they can be held accountable. This legislation extends the runway, so this is an extension for those investigations and the prosecutions they support. So now there are 10 years for investigations. Yes, it's a lot of effort, but we know the indictments that have happened so far, probably just the tip of the iceberg. So this was Bill HR 7334. So basically any criminal charge or civil enforcement action alleging that a borrower engaged in fraud with respect to a loan made under this program shall be filed not later than 10 years after the offense was committed. That's for the EIDL loans and EIDL advances, same thing, as well as targeted EIDL advances, 10 years as well. So for all of the EIDL grants and loans programs, there will be a decade of investigations. Would love to hear what you think about this. Is this a worthwhile cause? Do you support investigations for years to come to crack down on the folks who abuse these programs or not? Would love to hear. Drop it in the comments. Finally, to end today on the SSBCI, still 15 states have received funding. One is currently accepting applications via its lenders. That's Maryland. Now on the Skip blog, you can go to helloskip.com/blog. We are updating this page multiple times per week where we give a summary of the latest SSBCI situation. So we've put down all the states so far, how much they've been approved for. We're going to break this down even further so you can see what types of programs this money goes into. For example, in Arizona, it's a combination of loan guarantees and venture capital. We'll put down some of the details here. And then once they're approved, like in Maryland here, we will also link to lenders that you can start to apply for. So if you care about the SSBCI funding, if you want to track your state, tens of thousands of you have already put down your email, but now you know that there's a blog post summarizing all of this as well. So feel free to tell others. Not a lot of people know about these programs yet, but it is good financing, and the goal is to help underserved businesses and communities. Okay, to end today, because I promised I'd mention the two grants that are due tomorrow. Number one, the Venmo Small Business Grant for businesses with revenue under $50,000. They're giving out 20 $10,000 grants. It's due tomorrow. Make sure you get it in. That's this one right here. Plus the LinkedIn Creator Accelerator Program, also due tomorrow, up to $12,000. I covered both of those in videos. We'll link to those as well. If you want this sheet, you want to find these grants and the other new grants, we listed 3 new grants yesterday. There's a link in the description where you can drop your email in and get this sheet. This is part of our weekly funding roundup, and we talk about these in detail every single Tuesday. Finally, if you want to join us for our marketing webinar later today, where we're talking about tips on how to grow your customer base, including a checklist to keep in mind, become a Skip member, helloskip.com/plus. Use the promo code Ryder invite. And if you're already a Skip member, you can log into your dashboard, click webinars and videos, and you can register for today's webinar and see the recordings of all of our past webinars. Most importantly, stay well, stay healthy, and I'll see you tomorrow.